Okay, so I'm just gonna do this here because I've been trying to upload it to TikTok and it's like I can't speak in 15 seconds. This is gonna take me a little longer. I gotta process things. So let's do this here. Um, so we were talking about uh, finally getting to the point where you feel like you can actually work on yourself. What does that look like? How does that start? Where do you even start, right? There's so much to do. So a little bit about me. My name is Elizabeth Dugan, as I mentioned before, and you can call me Yaya. But what really formed my trajectory into self-care, self-help, kind of figuring things out on my own, and why I love to help other people do the same, is because so I was adopted when I was a very little baby, and brought to the United States, originally from Dominican Republic. And my parents passed away when I was very young, and so I was adopted into my own family, right? So that was a different dynamic. Within my household, race wasn't really an issue, as far as, like, at least not evidently, right? But my brother and I were black are black, and our mother and sister are white. That may have played some kind of role in something. I haven't placed it quite yet, but here we are. I guess we could talk about hair later, but anyway. So I really struggled. I was the youngest. I really, felt lonely a lot. Loneliness was really big for me. I felt very estranged, and I could never place why. And obviously, I think, now I can identify that it was because of the adoption, because of, being torn away from my root family, right? My original family. And torn away is really not exactly how I feel about it, but there is a separation part, right? That really plays into everything. Anyway, and I can go into all of the details at another point, but so I have siblings across the world, basically, that I don't really know very well. I have one who I do know a little bit better, because we've made the effort to work with each other and talk to each other, and know each other's families, which is really nice. Anyway, as a kid, I really struggled emotionally, especially in my teens. My 20s were awful, and I think it was, a combination of hormones, right? Because we all have our changing, evolving hormones that affect us daily, and especially in adolescence and in young adulthood, it's really, really challenging. There's so much that we just don't understand, because there aren't really words to put to it, and even if you did have the words, it's not something that necessarily clicks right away. So I will say that if you're going through anything like that, just know it does get better. It might take some time, but it does. With that being said, it doesn't mean that the work ends, right? We're always going to be working. I think that's the exhausting part, is that when you realize that when you're working on yourself, when you're trying to live a healthy life, emotionally, mentally, physically, it's work. And sometimes it's not laziness necessarily, but it's this feeling of like, I've worked so hard. You're exhausted, right? Like, it's like really, really challenging, because you feel like you've been doing it for so long. You're just like, at some point, feeling like you're dragging yourself. Like, here you are, this like human body, but you're just dragging your spirit. You're just like taking it to the next place. And sometimes it feels like there's no direction. It feels like maybe you don't know why it's even happening, right? All that to say, I feel you. I totally understand where you're coming from. If you relate to anything that I just said, we are kindred spirits. There's a lot to unpack there. And I think that, some things that people don't consider, and I'll just list them off so we can talk about it at another time. But some things that people don't consider is how we learn, right? So like how our brain processes things, and that things may be like emotions, how our brain processes information in general. We talk about people who are on the autism spectrum. We talk about people who are neurodivergent. We talk about people on all these different planes of understanding and processing. But that's something that's really common now, or becoming more common now, to talk about that thing, right? So like, the brain processing isn't something that was ever really a popular thing to discuss, right? It was kind of taboo to even consider that anyone could possibly think differently. And if you did, and if it was acknowledged that you thought differently, then you were a problem, right? And so we're trying to come away from that now. And I'm so proud of all the work I see young people doing now, and older people who are like, I'm breaking that cycle. I'm not letting this happen to my nieces and nephews, my cousins, my, the people that are coming up after us. So just know that I recognize the work that you all are putting in there. But some things to consider. One, again, how your brain processes things. So, finding a good therapist, finding someone to help you to really listen to what you're saying and translate that based on their experience as the medical professionals. Like, what is it that my brain does differently that maybe I'm not recognizing? And that knowing what that is could help me to pivot, adjust, use different techniques, right? Like, that's what we want to get to. Two, recognizing inherited trauma, generational trauma. So like, things that happen to your ancestors, things that happen to your mother, your father, your grandparent. There's a lot of research out there now that talks about like even the sperm that the male carries the DNA can be changed based on their, the carrier's mental and emotional state, right? Like everything that we are is affected by everything else that we are, right? So like it's forward moving in that way. And so if that's the case, you have to think about like how we create life and how that is affected by all of these other things that happened before that life was created. And we are that life, right? So like what happened before we got here? Who was affected by all of those things? When we talk about Black and brown people being enslaved, like we're talking about people being torn from their families. When we talk about indigenous people having their land stolen from them, I mean, we're talking about their life source, their culture, being penned up into these little groups and pushed out. Like that affects you. That is still something that is now in your body, in your cells, right? So that's the other one. Remember, to three. I would say that 3 is understanding how you processed the experiences that you had, and that can be trauma. That can be joy, that can be any number of things. But when you have experiences, whether it's, slipping into a pool and now hating water, right? Things like that. Or having experiences with people that didn't understand you. And so then you internalize that. And when you communicate with people, you end up not being your full self because in your experience, whether you acknowledge it or not, in your experience, people have made you feel a certain way. And so you've had to develop these skills to keep yourself from feeling that feeling again. And anytime you feel it, it spikes up and it hurts, right? You feel that in your skin, even in your body. So those are 2 or 3 things to consider. There's so much more, and I want to tell you so much more, and I have resources that I want to share with you as well, and I'm reading a bunch of books that I think would be really beneficial for people who are on this journey of self-discovery and self-understanding and self-healing. So if you're one of those people, drop a comment, tell me what's going on, let's work it out, let's figure out what, might be a good direction for you to go in. Bye-bye.